So I've seen a lot of interesting comments lately surrounding the iPhone XR, which we still get another month before people can actually order it and unbox it and try out the phone for themselves, but y'all know those Android fans are all gonna look at the tech specs, and that's the only thing they're gonna look at because that's all we have to look at right now. Today I want to dive into what market this is exactly aimed for. Did Apple create a new market that didn't previously exist for this specific phone model, and does it make sense in 2018? I know what a lot of you are automatically thinking, 720p in 2018 for $750? That's absurd. How could they do such a thing? I want to make one thing very, very clear. For one, we were expecting this all year. Literally in 2017, we got the report, the leak from insider information saying that there would be a 6.1-inch LCD iPhone next year that had a lower pixel density than the regular OLED models in order to be more affordable. This has been a very, very long-term report, and we honestly thought it was going to be way, way worse. Leading up to the keynote, we were expecting a legit 1280 by 720p display on a 6-inch smartphone display, which I voiced my concerns about several times. I said, that's pretty low. That's not a very good resolution for a phone that size, but maybe some people will be okay with it. Maybe some people won't care. And if you want that higher resolution display, of course, there will be the XS and the XS Max to reach that demographic. But as there's so many techies out there that love to get really hardcore down to the tech specs and look at exactly each dimension and resolution of every single smartphone and compare it to what you can get with the One Plus or get with the Poco phone or anything like that, everyone freaked out when the iPhone XR display was announced and it was not quite 1080p. But it was also not quite 720p, which is funny to me because a lot of people like to get caught up in the tech specs, but they don't exactly look at the tech specs. It doesn't exactly take a genius to look up what the actual resolution is of the iPhone XR, but what I can tell you is that it is definitely not quite 720p like we were expecting. Some people were saying it was going to be around 300 pixels per inch, potentially even lower, and that's where I was voicing my concerns. Then when the event happened, we found out that it had a 326 pixels per inch, which, by the way, is no means a high resolution display, but for a lot of people, it is by no means a low resolution display either, because we've had phones like the iPhone 8, which outsold the Galaxy S9 during many parts of last year, that had this same 326 pixels per inch. That was a smaller display, so I'll give you that, but this display is definitely high resolution to fit that larger size at 1792 by 828. So side to side, it's over 100 pixels larger than 720p, and if you think 100 pixels doesn't make that much of a difference, a 1080p display is 1920 by 1080, meaning that if you added like a couple hundred extra pixels to the up and down resolution of 1792, then you would reach the standard resolution of 1080p, which because of our new tall aspect ratios now, you're not going to reach that anyway. It's always going to be a little bit more off. But from what we've heard from the people that reported on the iPhone XR that were actually there at the event with the hands-on models, they were saying that the display was definitely low resolution, but not super noticeably. I think that there was a reasoning behind picking this exact resolution and why they didn't want to cram 1080p on there, and I think it's because the XR is trying to specifically prioritize things that maybe aren't as big a priority in the other iPhones. So that OLED display is obviously expensive, so they went with the LCD to keep prices lower. That dual camera costs more money, so sticking with the single lens obviously keeps prices lower. But the other thing the XR prioritizes that I don't think people give it enough credit for is the XR has the best battery life of any iPhone ever. It has a 90-minute larger battery than an iPhone 8 Plus, which if you compare iPhones on the Apple website, you can see the XR overall gets better battery performance and better battery life than even the newest XS Max at $1,100. That doesn't even get you the best overall battery because this thing likely is going to be using a lot less power. Using that A12 chip on a much lower resolution display means that overall performance could theoretically be a lot better than what you would get on a XS or XS Max. We saw this last year when we compared A11 Geekbench scores to the iPhone X and the iPhone 8 Plus. What people noticed is that on the 8 Plus, it would oftentimes do better because the resolution was not as high and it wasn't processing as much of the display and it wasn't dedicating as much of its GPU to how just the display works. Having a low resolution display helps with the battery life, helps with the performance, and means that when you're playing games or doing high performance stuff, it should be able to export or render things very, very decently for the people out there who don't need the extra high resolution display that most people may go with in 2018. Also keep in mind that there are cheaper iPhones with 1080p displays displays if people are prioritizing that. And they do absolutely need that high resolution display. iPhone 8 Plus is $50 cheaper, has 1080p, and that's not even bringing up the iPhone 7 Plus, which is even cheaper than that, and it also has 1080p. So it's not like there's not cheap options out there for people who want high resolution displays. What Apple did with the XR was try to make a more affordable approach to the success of the iPhone X last year, because so many people bought that at its $1,000 starting price. So they thought, okay, what things can we take out? What things can we focus on so that iPhone XR, the cheaper one, is able to reach a larger demographic? And I think that's exactly what it does. What's funny to me are people out there that look at the XR as a complete waste of time. It's completely stupid because you can get a OnePlus phone with a 1080p display. You could get this phone that has 1080p for a lot cheaper. Yes, if software didn't matter, then you can get much decent hardware elsewhere outside of the Apple ecosystem. Are you guys suggesting that Apple products are expensive? What are you talking about? This is not exactly a new idea. The mindset here is that when you're paying for an iPhone, you are paying for those years of support with iOS, you're paying for iMessage, you're paying for that ecosystem that this opens up. And no, you don't have to like it. I'm not against people who say that the XR is not for them. It's definitely not for me either. I'm gonna try to get one just to review and unbox, but it's definitely not gonna become my daily driver. I'm all about that iPhone tennis match. But I don't think it's too inconceivable out there to assume that some people may want an iPhone with Face ID and the bezel-less look, but they prioritize battery more than screen resolution. I'm sure there's plenty of people who would rather have a bigger battery than they would a high resolution display. That's what the XR caters to. If you don't like that and you think it's just a mess because you wouldn't like that thing, I hate to break it to you, but you are more of a sheep than I am, because you cannot fathom the idea that someone else in the world might prefer something else that you don't prefer. That mindset is supporting the idea that there's a one-size-fit-all one phone that everyone would like, and if it does something that you don't care for, then obviously that feature is a gimmick. If anyone out there prioritizes battery life over screen resolution, then they're wrong. It's not wrong to like something. So that's why today I just wanted to defend the XR and say that there is definitely a market out there for it. While I do agree it is a very distorted market, there may be a lot of people out there that are looking to get into iOS and are looking to get into this Apple ecosystem and just want a reliable iPhone. But in my opinion, those users would be better off spending less money on an iPhone 8 or an 8 Plus or a 7 or a 7 Plus, because those phones, they may not have the fanciest features, but they definitely get you within that ecosystem and they get you those years of support that you most likely are not going to get over on Android, and you're not exactly sure when those updates are going to come, and you're not getting those customer support benefits that you get with iOS. So that's why I personally think the XR is not going to sell exactly as well as people think it is. I think it may have long-term success, like within the span of 2019. It will eventually become the top-selling model, but just not at launch. I imagine launch day for the XR to be pretty mild. You might get a pretty good crowd, but you might also not drag out the biggest Apple fans, because the people who are huge iPhone fans are all getting the XS next week anyway. But the XR definitely has its place, and I think it's probably going to age fairly poorly. When I look at it, I just imagine the 5C, and I just imagine high schoolers dropping it and breaking it and putting stickers on it and having giant OtterBox cases around it. That's just what I see when I look at it. But the idea that it's a pointless, stupid upgrade because it's $750, but it doesn't have 1080p, it's just a very, very blind mentality of looking at it. There's definitely people out there that can make this work for them, that it's perfect for them. Like I said, it's not me and it may not be you, but they're out there. And I don't think you need to call them stupid or you need to call them idiots because, hey, I don't need to watch 1080p on my phone. It's not a big deal. I just want it to last throughout the day. Perfectly justifiable reason to prefer the XR, not to mention that lower starting price. So let me know what you guys think of the iPhone XR down in the comments below. Hopefully you learned something from this video and you can see the purpose of it now. And I hope we can have a civil, respectful discussion down in the comments. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.